One of the most ancient wizards on Toril is the Archlich Larloch, born around 2,124 years ago in the mighty empire of magic named Netheril. Larloch rose to power in a society dominated by magic users. He showed extreme promise very early in his career and eventually became the sorcerer king of the enclave of Exile, essentially the despotic ruler of a flying city-state constructed on top of a severed and levitated mountain peak, with an ornate Netherese fortress built on it. Netherese society was divided up into those who had power over magic and those who did not. All labour, toil and unpleasantness was handled by a ground-dwelling underclass, while the mages drifted in the sky above, enjoying fabulous excess and opulence, even as they plotted and schemed against each other fairly relentlessly. Larloch was a master of enchantment and extremely talented when it came to the creation of magic items. His skill with spells that dominate the mind was matched with a ruthless political drive that saw him survive every plot drawn against him. When the archwizard Karsus fatefully cast his doomed spell that destroyed the whole empire, Larloch was already headed to safety, having foreseen some great disaster and preparing for the worst. He was one of the very few rulers of Netheril to survive its collapse. Although his enclave of Exile did not fare so well, plunging from the sky due to the folly of Karsus, it was destroyed on impact. Larloch had Exile hovering high over East Faerun at the time to spy on the rival empires of Narfell and Ruamathar, and to learn more diabolism rituals by spying on Narfell's spellcasters. Larloch's contingency spells were triggered so abruptly by the ritual of Karsus that he had mere moments to leap onto his dragon friend Ongol, an ancient blue dragon who enjoyed working closely with Larloch on arcane research. Ongol used its treasure trove to create and empower a horde of various enchanted items that were engrafted onto its enormous body. These magic items were intricately linked, creating an arcane network that made Ongol a deadly juggernaut in battle. After Exile fell from the sky, flipping over and crushing itself under the massive weight of rock, Ongol was last sighted flying off to the southeast, away from Faerun, most likely to the Spelljammer port in Karatur, where Ongol would have departed to the planet Ibea, where Larloch is a frequent visitor, or perhaps the more obscure planet named Harkum, which is a comfortable retreat for Larloch as well as a place under the control of his underlings and allies. Not many know that Warlock's Crypt is crammed with magic items and new spells inscribed on stacks of replicated spellbooks, all manufactured by humans controlled by liches on the planet Harkum. Ongol may have chosen to settle and lair on planet Harkum simply because the dragons there seem to have died out some time ago. Being one of the most formidable diabolists of his age, Larloch had a very interesting life and was deeply involved in the governing politics of Netheril. He also thought nothing of controlling people and manipulating situations using his enchantment magic, and almost everyone working within the enclave of Exile was under his magical enthrallment. To accomplish this, one of his early feats was the creation of a mysterious artifact called the Death Moon Orb, or just the Orb. This powerful artifact allowed him to charm and mentally control his court members, spy on his enemies, learn their plans, and summon powerful fiends from the outer planes. Over the many decades of his life, Larloch was a skilled inventor of new magic. He knows a custom spell that allows him to walk through walls. He has specialist magic he created that allows him to drain necrotic energy from other undead around him, channeled through a light adamantine mace he carries. The spell is called Devastate Undead. He invented a spell, Larloch's Minor Drain, which drains the life force from a victim and transfers it back into the mage, healing them or giving them a temporary hit point boost. The spell can also be placed permanently on enchanted weapons, but has fallen out of favour among spellcasting schools. You can still buy that spell in scroll form from the wizard Talantir on his estate called High Hedge near the town of Beragos. While he and I have gone on adventures in the past, he is retired now and prefers getting very few visitors. Larloch not only controlled many powerful undead, but he is also a close ally of Zas Tam, the Thayan Zulkir of necromancy, trading knowledge, several magic artifacts, and a lot of Larloch's expertise in diabolism, the summoning, control, and interrogation of fiendish creatures from the lower planes. But Larloch also dealt with clones of the wizard Manchun. He traded an enormous wealth to Arcanoloths, who dealt with the night hags on Larloch's behalf. He trained a squad of green slard. He commanded a group of mages called the Imprisoners on a mission to create a new type of blue flame magic, items that trapped and fed off captured souls. Larloch's further experiments on soul transferal and storing arcane power may have been from the influence of the god Jurgle, shifting his tactics after the disastrous failure with Karsus to transform his soul into something other than that of a very powerful spellweaver. But the story of Jurgle's role in the rise and fall of Netheril is another tale. Larloch also created some wicked magic items, one of which is Soul Stealer, a magic ring used to harvest souls for the Shadow King's magical experiments. Soul Stealer was last seen in Mintassen's Mysteries on Westgate's Market Triangle, but good luck getting Mantassen the Magnificent to part with it. He warns adventurers not to use the ring as it's excessively cursed. A ring that can cast Circle of Death and Finger of Death spells at will is exceptionally dangerous for living creatures, as you can imagine. Mantassen has no intention of using it or selling it. He still warns thieves against using it, even on his dying breath he would. Originally, Larloch crafted the Deathmoon Orb to scry on and control his enemies and allies. Still, his frequent use of it to summon fiends and learn more dark magic secrets corrupted him towards more and more acts of evil. Larloch normally operates by avoiding wanton killing, making sure not to alert the living nearby to the danger they are in. He is careful and calculated, not prone to taunting or toying with a victim. He sees the living as little more than raw material and energy to be exploited. Larloch's experiments never end. That obsessive drive to control his environment completely and uncover the secrets of life and death will manifest as new and dangerous laboratories, more alternative undead and new magic relics. As a flying Netherese enclave, Orbidal, where he resides currently, once hovered over the cold forest on the southern shore of the Bay of Ascor. Now it rests at the base of a small mountain range. It's not very well known that in Warlock's Crypt, located between the cities of Baldur's Gate and Waterdeep on the Sword Coast, the Archlich Larloch has no less than 60 other liches serving him as his magically controlled underlings. There are numerous vampires, only half of which are humanoid, undead shapeshifters, animated furniture, and even an undead elevator. Larloch has strange beings from across the plains who have become undead creatures in his service. Mechanoids, clockwork architecture, self-restoring traps, automated negative energy batteries and rejuvenation chambers for the armies of the dead, armories crammed with magic items like some stored museum collection. Currently, Larloch is experimenting with using severed flying undead heads to create powerful swarms. He's been collecting lots of different types of flying undead, including a lot of captive Varguils. He has some prototypes, including a Death Tyrant Beholder, grafted to a dozen Demi-Lich skulls, and encased in a reticulated self-restoring troll bone armor. The thing is called Cataclysm, and guards Larloch's garden containing his precious lotus flowers, including the very rare Black Lotus Blossom. A lot of conjecture exists around that flower, but it's just very poisonous. It also requires specific growing conditions, so Cataclysm tends to it personally. The climate on the Sword Coast is not bad for it, but the blossoms need less wind and more swampy conditions, so there tends to be a lot of mist in the necropolis, thanks to the Death Tyrant's climate control magic. Seen from afar, the soaring towers that comprise the Warlock's Crypt have the semblance of great talons clad in black mail, menacing and grasping at the sky. These wizards' towers are linked to form a large walled castle around the ruined city. Each stands within a circular walled garden and courtyard. Dark bridges without rails span over the city, connecting courtyards and garden walls with the lower levels of the other towers. The highest and most dangerous tower belongs to Larloch himself, of course. Within the tower are unique safe rooms that quickly rejuvenate undead bodies, to which Larloch can quickly relocate if attacked and seriously damaged, only to return revitalized soon after. He spends most of his time in these chambers. Certain areas, caskets and cupboards contain magical traps that inflict his powerful curses upon trespassers. The other towers are home to the liches and vampires of the city. Each has dominion over a few levels where they conduct their nefarious experiments. The towers stand on the banks of a small spring that wells up within the cellars of Larloch's tower. It is polluted with the waste of his arcane experiments. Its waters are luminous at night, casting an eerie, flickering light against the towers. The city is otherwise gloomy and dusty, decayed, weather-damaged, and infested with vermin. The castle's central courtyard holds smaller buildings and abandoned houses linked by twisting streets and clustered around the banks of the spring and the walled gardens. These are the lairs of the shuffling lesser undead who inhabit the city, serve the Lich Lords, and comprise their armies. Aside from his encyclopedic knowledge of magic, Larloch is famous for his rare collection of over 24 ion stones, which orbit his skull at all times, giving him a wide variety of powers, protections, and enchantments. Some more powerful than usual, and some he has multiple copies of, such as his stones for increasing how many creatures Larloch can keep dominated at one time. At a rough estimate, Larloch has around 10 million gold coins worth of magic items on hand in his lair, which he is very skilled at using, knowing the properties of each and making every item himself. He may have access to a minor mythalar or similar device, allowing him to arm himself with numerous quasi-magical items and power any magical devices within the necropolis. Mythalars are basically magic artifacts that tap directly into the weave flow, like it is a literal power grid. Since there are no dead magic zones near Warlock's Crypt, this Netherese technology is still highly useful for the Archlich. It also is how he powers all the anti-scrying magic that preserves his privacy, even as he spies on everyone else he can. Larloch is a well-preserved skeleton who wears braces of armour, a mantle of resistance, gloves of storing that usually contain his staff of the Magi, and what he calls a scepter but is more like a mace of disruption had a baby with a rod of spellcasting and a rod of intensification. Basically, Larloch is such a master of meta magic, you never know if he is casting a highly modified or unique spell that has been altered and enhanced by his own meta magic casting, or the influence from some potent magic items. He has rings of spellcraft and X-ray vision, a robe of eyes that's now fairly tattered, his winged boots that have seen better days, but most folks just get mesmerised by the bright orange cube which creates a displacement effect, or the bright silver cylinder which can turn him into an ethereal form, or a deep blue rhomboid that provides a freedom of movement, or a spinning dark grey spiral that confers immunity against detection and location magic, or the dark green eclipse that provides a field of defensive luck, or a dark purple spiral that works the same as a powerful ring of wizardry, or the dark red cube, which is the same as a medallion of thoughts, or another deep green cube, which is the same as an amulet of the plains, a deep red sphere that boosts dexterity, a deep orange unobtrusive rhomboid that pops up and acts just like a brooch of shielding when needed, a dusty rose eclipse that gives a very intense awareness bonus to close-range defenses, a fast-moving and incandescently bright blue gemstone sphere that gives a powerful boost to wisdom, working in tandem with the dusty rose stone, a mottled grey sphere that allows a quick dodge and vanishing from sight, a pale blue orb that provides a huge boost to strength and catches more than a few opponents off guard if they ever assume a Lich is not physically mighty as well as potent at spellcasting, a pale green sphere backs this power up with melee combat, serving to increase saving throws and skill check bonuses. There's a pale white prism that acts like a pearl of power, and one that Larloch often glances at while talking, as it contains potentially 3 recalled 9th level spells. So it's a bit like a pretty nuke floating slowly next to him, just to the right of his head. There's also a pearlized brown eclipse that has the same bonus as the boots of speed, which is why his flying boots are kind of just a fun toy. A pearly black spindle gives him the regeneration powers of an undead troll and will only work on undead creatures, and a bouncy little pink and green Christmas ornament stone gives him a much needed boost to his charisma. A star-shaped stone of rich green gives him a more general boost to his luck, and a sharp spiral stone hovering just above his head acts like the helm of teleportation. He also has a couple of bright purple prisms that pop into view when he casts spells, augmenting his everyday use of the twin spell and quickened spell meta magics. Larloch's spellcasting is strong enough to contend with gods. Mortal creatures pose little challenge for him. A nice warm-up would be a couple of beholders and maybe some hobgoblin warcasters, but yeah, Larloch is not a foe to face without some serious protection from any and every kind of magic there is. Most casters who fling a spell at Larloch have the immediate problem of facing their own spell augmented and fired right back at them. There is also the fun problem of Larloch being totally immune to one spell per list of spells for that level. You only get to know what those spells are once you fight him. If he has a weakness, it is a vulnerability to silver weapons. It was the side effect of some very powerful protection, so both Larloch and any of his nearby minions will always act swiftly to remove silver weapons when they detect them. Larloch shares a mental link with the 60 other liches, including at least 3 demi-liches that inhabit the Warlock's Crypt. If one is aware of any particular danger, they all are. Their minds are in constant communication, and individual mental strength of each lich serves to bolster the rest. Therefore, when one member of the link must use a will save, all members make one. And if even one of them succeeds, all are considered to have succeeded. But if all fail, every link member is fully affected as though the effect had been targeted at them specifically. Larloch is the keystone to this mind link, and this position allows him to exert control over all the others as though through a dominate monster spell, automatically bypassing the undead immunity to mind-affecting effects. The other members of the mind link are automatically considered willing when Larloch targets them with a spell or other unique ability, and it's likely that if Larloch was somehow removed or cut off from the mind link suddenly, none of the others would survive. It's easier to think of all the other liches as nodes of Larloch that have more of their personality and quirks when they're further away from Larloch himself, as Larloch seems to have adopted the mentality of an illithid elder brain, treating the other undead in his lair as thralls and part of his more incredible physical being. Having overcome death, he now overcomes his other physical limitations by controlling a small army of bodies, basically. Larloch can mess with other spellcasters. For example, if your character has a spell that requires concentration, Larloch can steal that spell, taking it over, removing your character's control over it. He also can apply metamagic feats to spells even after they have been cast. Let that soak in for a moment. He once pepper shot a spelljamming ship right out of the sky with a single cast fireball, twinned repeatedly before they all detonated on target like the wrath of the gods. Larloch's insatiable thirst for arcane wisdom propels him beyond mortal bounds, showcasing magic unrivaled by most spellcasters. Renowned for his authorship of masterpieces such as Precession and Binary Inversion and the monumental book of Inversion and Duplex, his metamagic expertise outshines even deities. In the zenith of the Netherese Imperium, Larloch stood among those audacious enough to challenge gods, leaving an indelible mark on history and preserving the esoteric knowledge of archmages in his vast collection of tomes. At the core of his ceaseless research is the reconstruction of the Nether Scrolls, the bedrock of Netherese magic. Though their creation eludes even Larloch's immense power, his patient quest has yielded 17 scrolls, notably the Arcanus Fundaire chapter. This dynamic scroll adapts to the reader, unraveling profound insights into metamagic, epic spellcasting, and the very essence of the weave. These scrolls form the backbone of Larloch's millennium-spanning studies, continually unveiling new revelations in the manipulation of magic. Basically, the scroll adapts itself to the intelligence of the user, so every time Larloch achieves some new level of intellect through magical augmentation or otherwise, he secludes himself in study once more for months or even years at a time on that one particular scroll. Having weathered the cataclysm following Mistral's demise, Larloch holds a profound reverence for Mystra and the Weave. His focus shifts only when faced with immense threats to their existence. Collaborating with Mystra, he trades arcane breakthroughs for the liberty to delve into potent spell research and the crafting of formidable artifacts. Confident and detached, Larloch dispatches invaders ruthlessly. Peaceful visitors find freedom by contributing to his studies. Despite 16 failed attempts by Red Wizards of Thay to seize his power, Zastam negotiated peacefully, receiving 2 powerful artifacts and friendship for centuries. While fully capable of conquering Faerun, Larloch shuns conventional rulership. Instead, he inspires to construct and control a vast network of portals spanning planes. The ultimate goal? Perfecting portal enchantments and an unwavering pursuit despite centuries of challenges. So, next time you're nearby or listening to some tales about Dragonspear Castle, remember, not more than a day's walk from there is Warlock's Crypt, a massive ruin of a former human empire of magic, now home to an entire army of undead, and Larloch, the Shadow King, probably casually watching you right back, absent-mindedly, while he's reading some book of arcane horrors and floating quills, take some scratchy notes on drifting sheets of parchment. And on we travel with our day, leaving Larloch to his schemes. I am AJ Pickett. Thanks for listening, and as always, I'll be back with more lore for you very soon.